All right, we're going to jump into this.
Yeah.
Okay. It was an eloquently simple but powerful statement. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are empowered by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. A statement, nay, a declaration, made to Great Britain and the world that 13 colonies in a distant land would be standing on their own 2 feet, no longer beholden to the Britain throne, and was themselves 13 independent sovereign states. These 13 states would form the United States of America, and this document would be known as America's Declaration of Independence, signed July 4th, 1776. This is episode 76 of PHP Ugly, that Freedom Ring edition.
Oh, so I thought you were going to be low energy. Now I understand why you're standing.
So,
you've got
fun
the spirit
fact,
of America in you.
Fun fact, we here in the United States celebrate our Independence Day July 4th every year. That's the whole July 4th thing. But, little known fact, July 4th was the day we signed it. We actually didn't declare our independence to Britain until the following day, July 5th. So July 5th is actually the day the U.S. declared its independence to the world, not July 4th. But it's the day we signed it. So we're like, yeah, whatever. July 4th. It's a better, rounder date. So that's when we celebrate it. So anybody who visits America, who've always wondered why the number 76 seems prevalent in U.S. customs and cultures. We have the Philadelphia 76ers. We have Soldier 76. We have
Spirit of 76.
Spirit of 76. We have System 76, which I did confirm with System 76 that it all relates back to freedom and declaration and all that other stuff. I sent them an email and asked them what the 76 and System 76 was, and they told me that.
Wow. Prepping.
So that's why in American culture 76 is such a prevalent number. It's because 1776 is when we declared our independence. How are you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing pretty good.
You feeling independent? How do you think Adams, Jefferson, all those great minds who put themselves together, who decided to rise up against a whole nother country, how do you think they would feel about the people we have running our country today?
I think that if we put magnets on their corpses and put a couple coils of copper around the graves, we could power the entire country with their spinning.
I have a tendency to agree with you. I don't think they would be happy with the direction we've gone. It seems very disappointing. And it's funny because we were a sovereign state. We were proclaiming our independence as sovereign state. Now if you watch a YouTube video and somebody claiming themselves as a sovereign citizen, and they're quoting laws that were designed back in the Civil War by the team that lost, and trying to declare themselves a sovereign citizen, we laugh. But there was a time. I mean, right now we would never entertain the idea of somebody rising up against us, claiming that they're their own sovereign country. But there was a time we did that, and it was important. It was impactful and kind of cool.
California keeps wanting to consider it.
No, Texas. Texas is the one that keeps trying to do it. They're the ones that keep wanting to become their own country.
Aren't they already?
Kind of.
Would we have a hard time taking over Texas?
Would we want to? Really? I mean, really?
Well, they've got all the guns.
And oil. They got the oil.
Oh, yeah.
So what you been up to, Thomas? We're
Oh
we're
my
we're
god.
flying. We're flying just the two of us. No John tonight. As
Yep.
yeah,
He's continuing his mission to scrub his name from this podcast.
distance
And
himself. He's does he went and did one of those face swaps like Travolta and Cage did. You know, he's
yeah,
changed his face now, so I don't even recognize the guy. I don't know who he is.
he's got a new
It's
family. It's weird, but that happened faster than I expected.
or he might just have something else to do tonight. We can't be sure. It's kind of hard to tell with John. He doesn't really excuse me.
Yeah, he's a
Cut
quiet
that.
one.
He doesn't communicate well.
So I've been going a little stir crazy. We've had a project that's been dragging on for what I think now is 2 months longer than it should have. Should have been done
Mhm.
2 months ago,
Mhm.
and my work on it was done 4 months ago. My involvement is essentially over.
Mm-hmm.
So all the project managers and higher ups are busy assigning work and getting things tasked out for other people and don't have a lot of time to task me with a lot of jobs. So I've been reading, researching,
Mm-hmm.
been a little bored.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How do you handle? I don't know why this is. I feel like this is like an Achilles heel for me, and I really can't put my finger on why it is. But how do you handle going back on your old code, um, like say a year later? Like I feel like let me explain to you my situation. Not that this has happened recently, but what you said sparked up some thoughts. So, we work on a lot of proof of concepts, or we work on these little projects that they want to see how they're working, and then they'll get shelved for a while. And then maybe 6 months down the road or a year down the road, they want to pull them back out and look at them. And I've discovered that either I change my techniques so frequently, or I change my patterns, or the way I think of something, or the way I approach a problem so frequently that like a year later, I feel like I fumble around in my own code, and I'm like, I struggle.
Absolutely.
I don't. What is with that? It's like I should be able to fly through this code without an issue, and I find myself struggling to understand my own patterns when I'm the one that implemented them, and it does eventually start to click. But I feel like like an old wheel trying to get turning is like, oh, get turning, get turning, get turning.
Yeah.
So is that like human nature, or am I just like an idiot?
I struggled with that today, specifically today. I had an old ticket from August of last year that had just
Mhm.
had the PR was sitting there. It needed to get implemented and it never got put in. And my task for today was to take that, get it compatible with today's code, which is a different version of Laravel.
Mhm.
And that was where I ran into trouble. So this was written in 5.1. Our current version is 5.3. And enough had changed that figuring out where everything belonged was a task all on its own. Moving the things around, fixing the pointers to the right locations. It didn't end up being too horrible, but that it definitely there was a framework change that created the issue.
Yeah. See, for me, it's not even a change in framework. It's just abandoning a code base. Like if I'm not, I work on several projects with multiple clients, and if I'm not in a code base day in and day out, no matter how long I've worked on that code base, I just feel like I fumble around for way too long. Like
Well, I
it's
experiment a lot. I mean, I read techniques and tips and tricks, and I start using them, and if it's works out for a week or for a month, then I might keep it. If it turns out just not really be beneficial for me, I'll drop it. So I'll pull up old code that has way too many ternaries used in it. And
Mhm.
I'll look at it like, what was I thinking at the time? And I was thinking, oh, I was doing something specific here, trying to eliminate using this, and ended up this wasn't the way to go. And I'll
Yeah.
look at code that was really, really short methods, and everything pointed to repositories, and I don't do that anymore. And
Mhm.
so it's just that my style keeps evolving.
Yeah, I think I have that problem too. Yeah.
But
Mm.
I spent a lot of time this week looking at DDD.
Okay. Domain-driven development.
Yeah. Do you have any experience with that?
Not a ton. No.
It's very cool.
Mhm.
So I told you and John that if I were to speak at a conference coming up in San Diego, I would want to talk about the importance of the language library that clients and developers use between each other.
Mhm.
And getting into DDD, I realized, oh, that's a whole practice with an established series of books published by computer science professors who know far more what they're talking about than I do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not that you don't know what you're talking about, but yes, it's a very established approach.
Yeah, and so that's
Design.
essentially
It's a design pattern, right? Because it's actually domain-driven
no,
design.
no. It's a philosophy.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give that to you. Uh-huh.
I would say a design pattern would be something that gets included in DDD. There's a lot of uh, design patterns that are well applied to domain-driven design, but domain-driven design itself is a philosophy on how you start a project, how you continue work on a project, and how you maintain a project over years and years. Um,
Mhm.
and it really is the art of language. It really is just figuring out, spending time not programming, so that when you get to the programming part, you know what you're doing.
Mhm.
Um, so I've got some books on order. I've got Patterns, Principles, and Practices of Domain-Driven Design by Scott Millett, which
That's a very popular one, actually.
yeah, I've started going through what I can find on the free page of Amazon, the look inside section, and there's some stuff that, as a long term developer, I go, yeah, that's common sense. I've been doing that for 10 years. But then there's other stuff where I realize, oh, this isn't necessarily common sense. This is just practices I've come to because I've been doing it for so long. These are lessons I've learned, and they're lessons that could be taught as well.
Mhm.
Uh, Stuff like event event state, CQRS, which is what sort of got me into it. Do you know about CQRS?
I do not.
CQRS is sort of gets covered a lot by domain-driven design because it's a way of handling
Event
models.
state or event sourcing? I think you're talking about event sourcing, right?
Maybe I am. I'm not the best at it yet.
Yeah. That's
I haven't actually written anything.
Go ahead.
But the general idea is that there should be a read model and a write model, and they should be separate. And when you're reading, you read from the read model, and when you're writing, you write to the write model. And
That's interesting.
that keeps things separate.
So I
And
hadn't.
then,
I didn't realize that was part of domain-driven design, but I mean, for a while, actually, still today, um, we have this. I guess you can call it an API-driven architecture. One of the kind of things that I did with it is we have a read replica of our database, And so I created a model around that read replica. And unless the action that was being called was an actual write action, it would read from the read replica and would only write using the write model.
Right.
So kind of the same approach, but not really. But the idea was to kind of split that workload a little bit so that writes happen on one server and the reads happen on the other server, and hopefully handle the loads a little better.
Yeah, and one of the ideas behind CQRS is that that should be the sort of the nature of models in the first place, is that reading should be separated from writing and they shouldn't be related in any way. You're either performing the action or you're performing a read. Let me see what the best term is for that.
So CQRS is that command query responsibility segmentation.
Right.
I have the Wikipedia page
There you
open.
go.
That's the only reason I know that.
So command meaning write, update, delete. Query being read. And then, responsibility segregation. Those are the two responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Is command or query.
Mm-hmm.
And that those two things don't touch. And then you've got
not completely opposed to it. I mean, I definitely think it's adding overhead to the developers, but I mean,
and
it
that's
seems like a good approach.
That's the cool part about DDD, is that they acknowledge that this provides overhead for developers and that it's not necessary. It is just a recommended technique for scalable elements. But if your domain isn't scalable in a specific direction, then you don't have to do QCRS. You don't have to.
Right. So, for example, QCRS doesn't buy you anything if you don't have a separate read database.
Right.
If you're still talking to one database, it doesn't buy you anything to separate those models.
Or
But
if the data is added.
Yeah. But like in the case I was using it, where the read database was a completely separate database and the write database was still its own database. I in theory would get a little benefit out of that. My benefit not only it was a performance benefit, but in my head there was a security benefit too, because if somebody ever compromised a page that was associated to a read model, it wouldn't matter, right? Because that database is a read-only database. So they could know. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it wouldn't matter. They could still extract information, but they would never be able to delete the database or drop tables or anything like that. In theory.
Yeah, and it also lets you jump into stuff like event sourcing or command bus. You can switch things around on the write model without having to worry about the sanctity of the read model.
There was a very, very brief hiccup in time where the command bus was a big deal in Laravel, and then it quickly went away.
It's like 4 or 5 months. It really, it was everywhere, and then it disappeared.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, and I was kind of excited about it. It took me a little while to get my head around the command bus, and honestly, haven't used it, never used it. I mean, Jeffrey Wade did a couple of videos on it, and then all of a sudden, everybody stopped talking about it, and I never thought to implement it, but. Yeah, you're right. That is part of the whole DDD implementation.
Yeah, so DDD has a ton of. I mean, if you look at the contents of the patterns and designs, I mean, it just goes through so many different design patterns, previously solved problems that you probably shouldn't waste your time with, event storming, impact mapping. It's a whole language all on its own.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm super fascinated with it, and I've been trying to motivate myself to read it. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, or I have a lot of ambient YouTube videos just going while I'm working. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that works well for writing code, but it's not working very well for doing reading. So I have to shut off my entertainment.
I've been speaking of entertainment while you work. I mean, I've been hungry for a new playlist. I've been cycling through music lately. Now I am hooked on an album, and I harbor a lot of guilt for my appreciation for this album because I can't I can't sing it in public. Unfortunately, uh, and that's Jay Z's new 444 album.
Oh
I
yeah,
am
no, you cannot.
I,
You
no
can't even sing it
can't
in your
can't
head in public.
no,
No.
I can't sing it by myself without feeling guilty and like a racist. But I
Yeah.
tell you what, that guy's got such rhythm, such flow. I mean, he just kind of gets me in that groove when I listen to him spit. Man, he's all his albums. I'm a fan of Jay Z. He's one of those guys. I can just listen to him, just wax it all the time. And but this latest one, I got into it, and I didn't like it. Didn't process at first what he was saying, and then I started listening to the words more. I'm like, wow, that is bad.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've seen the video for the one song. I saw it on YouTube. It was weird. I think I saw it right when all that white supremacist stuff was happening, and I
Was it
saw it on
the
YouTube.
poverty?
Poverty.
Was it yeah, was it the Poverty in America video?
Oh, let me look it up now. I don't think that doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like poverty in America. It was the other one that's very difficult to sing in public. I don't even know the title of it. I should get the title. See if I can at least say the title here. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, come on, it's ready. The story of OJ. Uh, I saw that video, and
I don't
I
know that
was.
one.
Oh yeah, you do. You need to do a YouTube search for it. So when I first saw the video, I didn't hear the music. So I didn't realize this was the video for the music. And when I first saw the video, I thought this was associated to that whole white supremacy stuff that was happening in South
Oh.
Carolina or whatever. And then, and then somebody had told me, no, that's Jay Z's video. I'm like,
Yeah.
get the hell out of here. And so I listened to it. And I think that's probably the first time I really listened to the lyrics. And I'm like, wow, I can never sing this song ever.
No.
And the
No.
video is like 10 times worse.
You cannot watch this video anymore. Jeez.
I'm telling you, man. But the song is awesome. I mean, the if you listen to the rhythm and the flow and the music and what he's singing, it's a great song. But yeah, not one I'll be singing to my children anytime soon.
No. Granted, your children are adults, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, reeling back from that, I've been getting back into listening to some music while I work instead of some more focused entertainment. But realizing that I'm bored. I asked my boss man if there were any big, cool, awesome projects coming up in the future, something interesting to work on, and he just said no.
Hmm.
So I might have to take myself into some open source work, keep myself going.
So we believe it or not got a comment on our live YouTube stream.
What?
Google really needs to figure out a way when you get comments, when people are commenting on your YouTube stream, to put it in the Hangout. But yeah, Ben commented, you need to use a heavy duty IDE that helps you examine your code. I assume he's talking back to when we were, I was talking about struggling through my code. And I do, Ben. I use PHP Storm. Doesn't help. When I use the IDE. Yeah, that's true. I don't use it all the time, but I do have a tendency to use it on new code bases. Yeah. I don't know if it helps me a lot.
I'm heavily reliant on my IDE. I spent a pretty good amount of time
You use Storm as well, right?
Yeah, I spent a good amount of time really getting used to all of the features
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that I knew them sort of by heart instead of having to look them up one at a time.
Yeah,
And
I'm trying to get there myself. I really am, but I tell you, I said it in the past, and I'll say it again. If I stick with the IDE too long, I swear to God, I feel like a weaker developer. I go back into Vim and I start coding something up, and some of the simpler things I struggle with, some of the things I take advantage of in an IDE, and I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I forget to include use statements in my. And I even have a plugin where if I'm pulling in the request class, right? I have a plugin where I can do a key combination in Vim, and it'll pull in the use statement. But it's not like Storm where it just automatically does it. It doesn't say, hey, yeah, you're trying to use this and pull it in. I have to actually acknowledge the fact that I need to use it and throw a key combination in. So the automation of pulling it in is pretty simple. I don't have to remember the path and all that. I just forget to do it. And I tell you, Storm just makes me feel, I don't know, like
it's a crutch.
I guess yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Like it's a crutch. I don't know. I'm not knocking Storm. It's a fantastic product. I mean, hands down, one of the best. Their whole line of IDs seem to be
best. It's hands for PHP. It's the best.
Yeah, there are few IDs out there where it's just been such an overwhelming. I hear very few people knock Storm, and the ones I do, I acknowledge what they're saying. It's a performance hit, like especially if you're used to Vim, how quick Vim is. Firing up Storm takes a little while. It does take a little bit of memory if you have a weaker computer, but once you have it fired up, that goes away. I mean, I'll keep Storm open for days. I mean, it's not like I close it down every day. I just open it up. But still, I don't know. I don't know. I like my Vim, man. I like my Vim, but I've been using Storm way more. Like pretty much, unless I'm doing a quick edit, I'll go into Storm. I'm still using all my Vim bindings. We all know this about me. That's how I code. I don't understand people who don't use Vim bindings when they code, but the Storm stuff, man, it I hope it never goes away because it's we have pretty much our entire Diego Dev team uses Storm, and I know everybody feels like they're way more productive because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand feeling like you're a better programmer for using Vim, but if I'm paying somebody to work, I want them to use a power tool, not a hand chisel.
Nope, take exception to that. It's a Vim is a highly customized sniper rifle. It's very unique to that user. That's been dialed in very specifically. So it's not a chisel. And Vim, I mean, the thing about Vim is if somebody's coding well in Vim, then you know that they understand the platform that they're coding in. So
yeah, that's the other thing, is I don't want to fork out the money for a Vim user.
There's no additional money. What are you talking about?
Hold on, let's take a pause real quick. I've got
it's gonna lead into
massive. I've got massive lag on my end.
Is it me, or I wonder if it's me?
I just caught back up. It's looking good now. I don't know what it was, but it's nothing that I can see. Okay, back to it.
Make sure Zencastr is okay. So if you weren't using Storm, if Storm wasn't a thing, I think I've asked you this question before. If Storm wasn't a thing, what would you be using? And the reason I ask this is, in the thing I tell John a lot, is not everybody can afford Storm. Like not every, and there is a learning curve to understand how to use Storm. I mean, Storm is not something you just open up and start using. I mean, you could, but you're not going to get the power out of it. It's going to be very confusing. And again, not everybody can afford whatever the license model is for
It's like
JetBrains now.
$100 for a year. It's not bad.
Dude, really? Not $100
Yeah.
a year? You don't think that's bad? What else do you pay $100 a year for? Probably nothing. And $100 a year might not be bad if you're making a living off PHP.
You say nothing, but I'm thinking of all the things I pay $100 a month for.
$100 a year is a lot, especially if you don't make a living off PHP, if it's just a hobby. So you can't use Storm, and you can't spend. Your budget is, let's say, I don't know, if Storm's $100. Let's say your budget's $50 a license, not a year, a license. What do you go with?
Hot Dog Pro.
Hot Dog Pro?
Yeah.
What's Hot Dog Pro? I've never heard of that one.
It was a website homepage creator in 1993. It came with all the links to all the animated GIFs
I don't know
that you
why I
needed.
spent my time
It
talking
started.
to you.
The default
how about
template said in
today?
construction.
Today, what would you do today?
Today I have two options I would strongly consider. Three options. I consider gedit and Notepad++ to be in the same category.
Okay. Notepad++ is Windows specific, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It might be ported out now, but I'd be looking at Sublime Text 3.
Sublime Text. Oh yeah, 3 actually just got released this week, huh?
Yeah.
So we just onboarded a new contractor this week who's a big Sublime user. I know Sublime's big in the Laravel community as well.
It's big with Ruby developers too.
Yeah, I've never been a big Sublime. I have Sublime. I even paid for a license for Sublime. Never been a big Sublime user, but I know it's one of the more heavily used ones out there. Code editors out there. Now, before I came to Storm, as far as IDEs use goes, I've been using Vim forever, but I did give a pretty significant run at NetBeans for a while.
NetBeans
I don't know
isn't bad.
I don't know where they're at nowadays.
I used Eclipse back in the day, which is a hot dumpster fire.
Yeah, the Eclipse. You talk about slow to load. Holy crap! But that thing could do everything under the kitchen sink, man. Holy crap. Atom would probably be one of the ones I'd go with if I couldn't use Vim and I couldn't use Storm. I don't know why I couldn't use Vim, but let's just say I couldn't. I would probably try Atom. And
if your colon keyboard button broke, you'd have to switch off of Vim.
Atom. So I've been tracking the beta version of Atom. So there's two Atom releases. There's Atom, the publicly available blah blah blah, and then there's the beta version, which is also publicly available. But they always have the cool new features. And I noticed today, and I installed it and didn't even think to play with it before the call. I didn't know we were going to go down this path, but Atom released plugins to turn the Atom editor into an IDE. So instead of you having to go and figure out all the plugins you need for PHP and trying to make Atom kind of customized for PHP development, they have a whole IDE system that you can now plug into it. And it's supposed to give the look and feel of an IDE. I don't know what exactly that is. Like I said, I didn't even think to launch it before we started talking. That would be like my fantasy was that one day JetBrains would release a Vim plugin that simulated all the stuff that they did in Storm, because all of it is out there. You know, like all the functionality that Storm has is out there in Vim and different plugins. And I'm like, I would pay JetBrains to come out with a Vim plugin to simulate all the stuff that they have Storm doing.
I'll pay him not to.
$100. I'll pay him $100 a year.
Bounty. I looked at it. Sublime Text is $80. So I'm still not
really?
within your requirements there.
Wow, that surprises the hell out of me. That's how much a license for Sublime Text is costing?
Sublime Text 3 might be different for Sublime Text 2, but
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't realize that. Okay, so you can't do Sublime Text. Too much money. How much? I gave you
I'll tell
$50.
you what. Do you know what I learned to write code in?
Front page. Microsoft.
Way better than that. If I told you it was the Vim arch enemy, what would you say it was?
Emacs?
Fuck yeah.
You learned it in Emacs?
I learned how to write code in Emacs. Xemacs
You're
specifically.
idiot. You talk about not being able to exit a freaking editor.
No,
how do you
Xemacs.
exit Emacs?
You click the X. You close it. This was this was GUI driven. This was GUI Emacs.
So there is a fantastic version of Emacs that I was trying to convert myself to called Spacemacs. I've told you guys about this in the past. And Spacemacs was designed for Vim developers, and it had what they called was a HUD, a heads-up display. It was ingenious. So it had a bunch of the Vim bindings, but if you hit the space bar, hence the name Spacemacs, Space Emacs, if you hit the space bar, this whole HUD would pop up, and you could actually navigate everything. Like your menu system in a GUI, you could navigate everything you needed to do. If in case you forgot, like let's say there's a command that you don't use a lot in Vim, you have to open up your vimrc file or if you have it in there. Like I'll create key bindings that I don't use frequently, and I'll have to reference back to my vimrc file to see what those key bindings were and exactly what they did. But in this Spacemacs implementation, you hit the space bar and like this little HUD pops up, and let's say like Git is your thing. You don't use Git every day, or you're doing something in Git you don't do every day, like a diff or something like that. You hit the space bar, and one of the options would be Git, and you hit whatever it is, the letter K or whatever it happens to be associated with, and the Git hub would pop up. And I mean, it's very, very nice. And the only reason I didn't actually continue to use it is there's like 4 Vim bindings that I cannot live without. And if a implementation of Vim doesn't support it, so like if I'm using Atom with the Vim bindings, or in this case Spacemacs, if I can't figure out how to implement these 4 bindings, I won't use it. And I mean, an example of those bindings are I hit JJ when I'm in insert mode. If I hit JJ, it takes me out of insert mode. If I hit enter when I'm in normal mode, it saves the file. Those are my 2 biggest ones. Those 2 there. You know what?
You love Vim so much. You've told me this story like 4 times.
Yeah. So those are my 2 biggest Vim bindings, right? And if I can't get something to do that, like if there's a Vim emulator that, like for Atom, I think Atom doesn't use, I can't get one of them working Atom, so I don't, that's one of the reasons I don't use Atom. But I didn't know how, and I'm sure they would work, but I didn't know how to configure them in Emacs. And I went to read the documentation on how to configure key bindings in Emacs. That shit ain't easy, man. That's like difficult stuff. You like have to basically code.
If you know Lisp, it's fine.
You're right. Do you know Lisp? Maybe I should have asked you.
No, not
at all. I didn't
all.
realize you were an Emacs person.
I did. I used Lisp because so you have to remember that this is 2004, 2005. So when you're talking about PHP IDEs, there is nothing out there. However, Emacs had a PHP mode and an HTML mode. So
really,
yeah. Now you could only run one mode at a time unless you ran the multi-mode mode, which could switch between 2 different modes at once. But you had to write that in Lisp for yourself to get that to work. Now, fortunately, my mentor was a graybeard, so he had no problem just getting it working for me. But
I never pinned you as an Emacs user, man.
I never considered myself an Emacs user because as soon as I found out that IDEs were a thing, that was where I started going.
Oh, really? So you've never used like just a text editor?
Yeah, Hot Dog
You've
Pro.
always been. Stop.
I'm serious. 1996, I was getting. I mean, there was a glut of homepage makers, and
Mhm.
as a teenager, I wanted to have my presence on the internet known. So I had like 5 different under construction websites at the time with Flaming Skull animated horizontal rules and things like that. I mean, I was the ugly part of GeoCities for sure.
Mhm.
I remember when Blogger got bought by Google, and I had a website there, and I had a website on GeoCities, and I remember when LiveJournal came out, and I thought it was dumb, so I didn't have one there. I mean, I'm old school internet.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
just
I still
old.
use. You know, I still use Usenet too.
I know you do. Yeah.
You know when I started using Usenet?
To tell.
94.
Mm.
Before AOL had a web browser or had a connection to quote unquote the internet, it had support for Gopher and Usenet, both of which I used.
Mm. That's funny. I don't. You know. I remember back in high school there wasn't the internet like there was today. There is today, and not even close to it. And all we did in high school, we had the dial-up modems, and you had to dial into different systems. And the so we had our little school system we dial into, and that was it, right? I mean, there was it was a bulletin. You could dial into bulletin boards, but you had to dial into each bulletin board separately. It wasn't like this all
Oh
connected
yeah.
internet, right? And after that, I went to college. I did some COBOL programming, and I realized I hated it. And I swore that I would never code again. And I probably should have kept that promise, but but then the internet eventually came around, and I realized, hey, coding's easy again. Let me get back into this. But I never got into Newsnet or Gopher. By the time I hit the internet, HTTP was a thing. Uh, I, I I think actually the very first thing I did was Juno Mail. I don't know if you remember Juno Mail, but
Oh
Juno
yeah.
Mail was the first, and that was my first email address. And I dial up and just see. I knew absolutely nobody who had email, nobody at all. But I would dial in every day to see if somebody emailed me. I had nobody to email because nobody had email addresses. But I would dial in, see if I happened to get something from somebody. And um,
Did you ever download Playboy pictures on your modem?
uh, yeah, you mean like nudies?
Yeah. Well, no, because it was
Yeah,
Playboy. Because I remember when there was just Playboy on the internet.
I don't remember it being Playboy, but yeah, I mean, I remember that.
1993. 1993. My brother went to college and was part of his comp sci. He had access to the internet, and
Oh
he
yeah,
showed me, "Hey, look, Playboy has a website up." And they were it.
really?
That was it. 256
Yeah.
colors, right? Everything was dithered to hell, and it took like a half hour to download a single image. And yeah, there was a long time where if there was a nudie picture, it was published by Playboy.
uh, Playboy still a thing? Are they still around?
No,
They're not.
no,
Are you serious? Are they really not a publication anymore?
they're a publication, but they're not a nudie publication anymore. They went clean.
What?
Yeah, no nipples, no nothing. It's all
Really?
yeah, it's just as provocative as FHM or Maxim. It is no longer an adult magazine.
Oh,
They have networks. If you go on the internet, they still have Playboy networks, which are adult oriented, but the magazine itself is interviews and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you know? Well, I mean, yeah, they've got to do what they've got to do to survive. I guess if that's what they feel like they need to do to survive.
So another thing I've been doing this week, we've talked throughout the week, which we don't normally do, but we've talked throughout the week about the podcast and the format and things like that. We talked a little bit about it on the podcast last week. So we're switching up the format a little, bringing it back to the original concept, having it hanging out, chatting, not doing news breaks and covering our own drama. So I had a text pad open that had my like little talking points for the week, things I wanted to remind myself.
Okay.
And I've had it open all week, just sort of leaving myself little notes.
Uh-huh.
And I went to open a 200 megabyte SQL file today, and it opened up in the same text editor and crashed it.
You know, Vim could open that up with no problem, but you know, I digress. Go ahead. So yeah, it crashed your text editor. That sucks.
Yeah,
Did you not save the file?
No, it was supposed to stay there. I wasn't expecting to have to.
I see. Can't do
have
so.
to save all.
I got two suggestions for you. So number one, you probably heard me, and I've been doing this without telling you guys. I do this a lot because I don't want. So listeners of the show know that we have a Trello board, and we'll put news or articles up on the Trello board. It's meant to get feedback from everybody on these topics when we get around to talking to them. Like Thomas said, we're changing the format a little bit. We always felt we try to post a bunch of news stuff, and we always felt like we needed to get through all the news items. We're going to kind of go away from that a little bit. But something I've always done is I have a to-do list where I would post topics I wanted to talk about, but I didn't want to share with you guys because I wanted you to get your honest responses to. So right before the show, you probably heard me say, well, let me see if there's something else I want to talk about. And I pulled up my little to-do list. I'm like, and chuck the one topic I was going to talk about, mainly because John wasn't here. So there's that. I don't recommend that. I'm a heavy to-do list user so I use it like way beyond just to-do lists. I mean, I use it a lot. The one thing you might like, and I don't know, maybe you won't because you're not mobile like I am.
Productive.
But Simple Note is a fantastic application. And the thing I love about Simple Note is it doesn't matter where I'm at. It's exactly what you said. It's used for jotting down quick little notes and reminders, and it syncs up to everywhere I go. So it's fantastic for that stuff. As far as like a quote unquote text editor, that is my text editor now. Simple Note. You should check it out.
Well, I have a Galaxy Note 4 little stylus thingy. So there are definitely some evenings where I can think of an idea but can't make it to a computer.
Yeah.
And that's where all my stream of consciousness gets dumped out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
use
about it forever.
I like Simple Note a lot. I use that. I always have a Simple Note open on my system, regardless of if I'm mobile. Because when I'm at my home office like I am now, I have a desktop. But when I'm mobile, I have a laptop, and then there's always my phone too. Which Simple Note I have on my phone as well. So again, you keep all your notes, like you said, as you think of things, you put them there, and
yeah,
that's where I actually have the list of numbers. So as I come across a number in day-to-day life, I'll put it in a Simple Note, and I'll make a note of that number and what it what it referenced, and when I get to that episode, I have it.
That should have remained a secret shame.
I'm committed to this, man. I mean, this is what I do day in and day out. You guys don't understand. I never stop. I never turn. We stop broadcasting, but I never turn it off, man. I'm always doing this.
Did you see we got tweeted at and someone used the hashtag Keep It Ugly.
I did. How cool was that, huh? Keep it
I
ugly.
I showed that to my wife, and she gave me a look like it hurt her to know that I cared about this.
I shared with you. I'm like, we need to get shirts made up. Keep it ugly. I think that's
Well,
the
because
slogan.
it was never, yeah, but it is our slogan, but we never discussed that at all. We
No.
never said Keep It Ugly is our slogan. We sign off with it every time, but that's the end of the episode. I figure nobody gets to the end of the episode, so nobody's ever heard us say that.
Well, and what's funny is if you remember the real history, I was the only one that used to say it. I used to always say "Keep it ugly." Then all of a sudden, you guys started saying it. I'm like, all right, cool. We're all saying "Keep it ugly" now. I don't even know why I said it. But, we were trying to come up with a clever way of ending the show, and so I'm like, well, fuck it, keep it ugly.
I mean, that must have been like episode 10 or something. That must have been over a year ago.
Yeah.
And it just happened. So it happened totally organically, and it never occurred to me that it had happened at all until somebody hashtagged it. And I was like, holy shit, that's a thing. That's not supposed to be a thing.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
I'm stoked we have listeners now. We have a good handful of listeners now.
It's fun. Yeah, I love getting tweets from people, and I get people that reach out. I even get people that find me on Telegram. I guess I mentioned a few times on a few shows that I use Telegram, and I've had a few people reach out to me on Telegram and say, "Hey, are you this person?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's me. What's up?" So it's fun. I love it. But yeah,
you get called Shokum too, don't you?
Shokum. That's it, man. That's my that's my Twitter handle. That was my handle for the longest time when handles were cool. And it's usually the username I'll go grab because nobody knows what Shokum is, and it's not a real word. So it doesn't matter how late I get to a service, Shokum is usually available. So I'll go grab it. And but yeah, that's me, man. I'm Shokum. I enjoy when people call me Shokum.
You know my handle.
I do. What is your handle? Oh wait. Are you talking about your current one on Twitter? Or the one that you use?
The one that I use privately on accident. Yeah. So I'm PFY on everything except for the things people would know me for.
Right.
Which I didn't
realize you had another handle. I didn't realize you were exposing that one, but you had another one too.
Well, I'm T Rideout everywhere.
But you had one. You had PFY. And then I thought you had another one you told us about. Now the name escapes me, and I forget what it was.
So PFY is a callback to Bastard Operator from Hell, which is old school network admin comics, stories, stuff like that. And once a year, someone on a video game will see my handle and say, "Oh my god, dude, you're PFY. Are you really PFY? Is that story about you?"
Explain to them who PFY was.
Well, I won't give away the acronym because that's my favorite part of it, is that people still don't know the acronym.
But you can still tell.
PFY was the sidekick of the Bastard Operator from Hell, and he was a malicious little shit who worked for a giant malicious asshole, and they ran business networks in the UK and wrote stories about what it was like to be a network admin in the 90s and early 2000s.
So if you make a living off the internet today, or even enjoy this stuff, you don't know who the Bastard Operator from Hell is, look it up on Google.
Treat yourself.
It is hysterical. It's stand the test of time. And the stories are just as funny today as they were back then. They were just hysterical stuff.
Yeah, it was customer support stories before customer support stories existed. It's great.
It's true. It wasn't exactly customer support stories, but yeah, it's they kind of the same context. Yeah.
So going with the trend of we've been talking about revamping the format of the show a little bit. You know what we're not doing?
What's this?
We're not ditching the doom and gloom.
We're not ditching.
Oh, it's here to stay, baby.
No, I don't think the 3 listeners that we have that listen to us daily would let us. Before we get into the doom and gloom, we should have some wrap up to the drama that we talked about last week. So I did mention that Taylor had DM'd me, and we talked through the whole drama with me saying that I didn't feel that Taylor acknowledged his community enough, and
George Bush doesn't care about black people. Oh wait, no, that was Kanye, wasn't it? That was Kanye.
Interested. I did not hear from Taylor after that show, so it's all dead now. I mean, I don't know if it's dead. I'm sure Taylor is still pissed with me and not speaking to me or whatever it is, but there was no further follow up. I mean, I said my piece and I reiterated my piece, and that seems to be the end of it. So I didn't want people to think that I was just leaving it out there or shoving it into a corner. Just let them know that there's nothing else to talk about. It's over.
Well, I mean, I do feel like he is trying to involve himself in the community more. He is retweeting things. He is interacting.
I was wondering if it was me. I was wondering if it me because I noticed over the last week or two, he definitely seems to be he seems to be engaging more. Which is
and in a friendlier way, which I wholly endorse.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that. If that was a direction he was naturally going to, or if it's something that
I think we can take credit.
I'm going to take credit. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Making Lairville a better community, why not? I'll take credit for that. Sure.
All right, so let's take 1 minute here. I'm going to use the restroom and wash my hands.
Good. I got to open another bottle of scotch, anyways.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm going to convert back to him. Converting down to a sitting position here.
I liked the energy it gave you, though.
Did it give me energy?
Yeah, it was real truth to the haters. So,
all right,
ready?
Yeah.
Let's do one more clap check real quick. That's not a clap check.
3, 2, 1.
So if you've been following the news let's say, at all this week, you know what the doom and gloom is about.
Trump?
No, amazingly enough. It would appear that Equifax had managed the perfect trifecta of throwing up on itself and then shitting its pants, and then handing its wallet to the nearest stranger.
Equifax. Wow. Okay, let's talk about it. We should.
This is a big story. I think it affects us more than people want to admit, because it is online security in its rawest form, and people want to point and laugh, but the implications are pretty vast. We're going to cover a lot of just stuff quickly, I think, in this segment. I don't know if we want to spend 4 hours breaking down everything that happened, but on the subreddit, I'm going to try and publish something more my opinion and breaking down things piece by piece. So
Fair enough.
if you want to see,
let's, I don't know if everybody who listens to the show will know who Equifax is. I'm moving my mic. Sorry about that. And when you do your post, I don't know if everybody who listens to the show will know who Equifax is, but it's a U.S. based, right?
It's U.S. based, yeah, but it is international, which is one thing we'll get into.
And they do credit checks and credit reports and stuff like that. So that's kind of give you who they are and what they do.
So it broke this week that Equifax had been compromised. 143 million customer records, things including social security numbers, full names, birthdays, things like that. Everything you would really need to compromise somebody's identity. And it slowly just sort of got worse and worse and worse from there. So it started off as like, oh, another big hack, although this time it is an identity thief toolkit now. And one second. And it sort of escalated from there into just everything that could possibly be done wrong in the face of such a thing. So the quick breakdown, I'm going to rush through some parts and then we'll talk about it afterwards. The exploit occurred because of a bug in Apache Struts that had a CVE issued for it. The vulnerability appears to have been pretty old, and by pretty old I mean 9 years old, and should have been patched, updated, or managed by Equifax in some way. It came out that 3 upper-level managers dumped their stocks the week before the announcement that the hack had occurred. It came out.
That's a big deal right there.
Yeah, and they're going to get what's coming to them. But and then it was revealed that the hack had actually occurred, I believe at this point, we just found out today, months ago. And that the delayed response had caused a lot of problems, or will be causing a lot of problems. They launched a website that was going to tell you if you were compromised in the attack, and you could sign up for a free credit monitoring service. Analysis of the terms of service of that free credit monitoring service stated that you could not sue them for breach in this case. They denied that that was the case, and that was generic terms of service. It did not apply to the situation, even though it was what was written in the contract that you agreed to. So they could just say it didn't matter, but it really did.
Mm-hmm.
But if you asked it what if you were compromised, the results it gave you were random anyways. Just by switching IP addresses, you could enter the same data and get a different result. And so a developer who wrote a bot to fight parking tickets decided, I'm sick of all this. I'm going to change my bot so that it can file a state small claims suit against Equifax automatically. Launching this bot allows you to quickly enter your information in and sue Equifax for up to $25,000. It is absolutely legitimate. It is a real court case that gets filed in your name, and you're responsible for it.
It's funny. I'm looking at their Twitter feed, and their Twitter posting from September 1st is our chairman and CEO, Richard Smith, has been named one of Atlanta's most admired CEOs.
Yeah, not anymore.
You think that's still the case? It's oddly specific. It's not one of America's most admired CEOs. It's one of Atlanta's most. Like, this town in this country, this guy is like admired for being a CEO.
So when do you think the data breach occurred?
Well, you
If
already
that
gave
was
me a hint,
September.
right?
That was
You said
September.
9 months ago. So
Is it several?
I'm thinking December, January.
It was July.
Of this year?
So they've been sitting on it 3 months. Which is also illegal. You are supposed to disclose in a timely manner, which it did not. Fortunately, this was, for the most part, American citizens' data. However, it did pique the interest of security researchers who decided to look into Equifax's customer service portal in Argentina. The administrator username and password on the customer service portal in Argentina for Equifax's site was admin password.
Okay, to their defense, you got to admit, nobody would have thought they would have been that dumb enough to use the word password as their password and admin as
no person. Yes. But I can absolutely guarantee you that there are a billion bots out there who already discovered this, and that this data had been compromised long ago. And that data revealed 14,000 citizens' private security numbers, a security system separate from Social Security, of course, but unique to Argentina, and credit card numbers, transactions, debts. And so they pulled down that website once somebody discovered that all you had to do was ask for the country's credit information. So now we're on to the class action lawsuit. The class action lawsuit is for $86 billion. And the bigger deal is it's throwing the entire concept of data collection as a monetization system into question.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if you are in data collection to monetize, what responsibility do you have? I mean, the creator of the bot to automatically sue Equifax stated that his intention was to bankrupt and destroy Equifax permanently. Mm-hmm. He wanted the company to die and never come back, which is clearly he's got a chip on his shoulder, but he's not wrong. This was a fuck up of every possible proportion. Everything that could go wrong went wrong in a cascade of 4 days of bad news. And I'm sort of amazed that the American public isn't out in the streets withdrawing their cash from banks. Everyone I know is issuing credit freezes, But the coverage that you're seeing about this really pales in comparison to the number of people it's going to affect. If you go to CNN right now, you're still going to see Hurricane Irma coverage. You will not see information on how the Equifax breach is going to destroy your life if you're unlucky, just a little unlucky. And I think the entire credit system is at risk right now if all of this information really is publicly available or will be publicly available soon. If I can get anyone's social security number and address and name and phone number and email address for $5, I mean, we're looking at season 2 Mr. Robot right now.
Season 3 actually is coming out.
Well, season 3, it's about cryptocurrency. It's about what we do after this disaster occurs. But I mean, this is a disaster of epic proportion that I think people are taking very, very lightly. Now, I'll tell you one thing. You know what? I'm not protecting my credit in the slightest bit.
What do you mean?
Plausible deniability. I have bad credit or no credit. I'm not a credit person. I've never worked on it, never cared for it, made lots and lots of mistakes in my youth. Don't care about my credit. There's a lot of Americans out there who, if they're told that their credit is at risk, they're not going to care. They're just going to say, great, I don't want to freeze my credit. I don't care. I don't give a shit. So once those accounts get compromised, all you have to do is say, yeah, Equifax happened. Credit is a joke now. No one took it seriously. How are you going to collect on something that you can say, you can point at Equifax and say, this happened? You can't collect from me because I clearly got my stuff. Everyone got everything compromised. I mean, this is
probably
this.
You probably shouldn't be outlining that plan on a podcast, Thomas. I don't know. That might be
not a plan.
Bad
I don't care. I'm just saying I don't care. But I know people who are a lot poorer than I am who really don't care either. And now Equifax is on the hook for the credit of the entire nation of people who don't really care about their credit. Some of those people might be malicious, some of them not, but the concept of credit is going to take a very, very strong hit in the next year.
I don't think the concept of credit is, but the concept of somebody's credit report will.
Sure, I'm equating the two.
Okay.
You want the domain equihacks.com?
Do I want it? No, I don't want it.
Why you can't have it. They bought it before they announced that they got hacked.
They bought it before. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, they hired a PR firm, and a few. The week preceding the announcement of the hack, the PR firm went around buying domains that could implicate Equifax negatively.
Which didn't help the situation, I'm sure.
So there's your doom and gloom. Just a little, just the casual implication that society is collapsing and you're not really noticing.
All right. Well, as far as doom and gloom goes, that's not that bad. Okay.
Well, what do you think about it? Because the discussion now is liability.
I think it's horrible. No, it's horrible. It really needs to be a wake-up call to people how much of our information is out there, and I'm just as guilty of it. You have to have your information out there to get anything done. And I used to have this conversation with my dad before he passed. My dad refused to participate in any of this online stuff. He refused to do online banking because he didn't want his information on the internet. And I kept telling him, like, it doesn't matter if you participate or not. The information is there, and it's accessible. I mean, whether you choose to take advantage of it or not, it's there. And we need to understand as a society what that impact is. So where it used to be a credit score was such a concrete number in the dirt where it says, okay, this is how good of a person you are. We need to come to the realization that that does not really represent anything anymore, because we have all these challenges now of identity theft and breaches. It's just it's a reality of the world we live in. I don't think it's going to change. I do think that stricter global laws need to be implemented for people who participate in these hacks. And that's that's one of the problems we have, because these hacks can happen in countries that are very lax on the hackers. Sometimes they can hack with the government's support, and something needs to be done about that. Where it's just this, global.
I say the opposite.
Well, that's an interesting statement.
CVE? Do you know what a CVE is?
CVE? No, I don't know what a CVE is.
Consumer common vulnerability and exposure. So these kinds of exploits are usually well known before they are taken advantage of. Things like, all of the ransomware stuff that came out lately, the Blue Note or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that for a long time they were known issues, and you just had to keep up on it and keep your stuff updated. But then the NSA leak occurred, which produced a bunch of zero-day vulnerabilities. A zero-day vulnerability is a vulnerability that's not covered by a company yet. They don't know that it exists, and there's no patch for it.
Mm-hmm.
What we need is a government cybersecurity agency which inspects software for vulnerabilities and enforces companies using that software to keep an updated version of the software.
I think that's a dangerous statement you just made.
Right now, the people doing the research are Krebs, Shiner, Kaspersky, private corporations, private companies whose interest is selling their expertise. Mm-hmm. They do all of the security research.
So you're actually promoting the government's involvement in everything, basically.
I'm saying that the government, when it comes to the mass collection of data of American citizens, needs to have a say. The government needs to be able to go to Equifax.
Statement.
The government needs to be able to go to Equifax and say, if you're going to collect this information, it better be secure. We're going to make sure it is.
I mean, they do that now. They implement laws and regulations. They do. There are laws and regulations.
So look at the regulation. Look at the regulation that exists to prevent this from happening with Equifax. It's called the regulation gap, wherein the FCC has control over the regulation, but handed it down to a second party who was in charge of enforcing regulation, but they had no teeth. The enforcement of the regulation was just a verbal warning.
That's an issue with the government. But
right, because these are two separate entities that are trying to pass the buck.
The checkpoints are in place. What you're saying is you want to shift responsibility over to the government to say, when something like this happens, we can point to the government and say, hey, you shouldn't have let this happen. But in a way, what we have implemented now is better. The party is still responsible, but the government implements regulations. And keep in mind, we're only talking about the U.S. government. The internet being a global, entity, it's kind of tough to say, this has to hold true for every service out there. That's why, we see now a lot of people who, when you visit a site, will get that warning message, hey, this site uses cookies, acknowledge that and click this Xbox. That's a regulation implemented by another country. That's not a U.S. regulation.
Right, but that's got teeth, though.
But it has teeth. It has teeth because the government, the government's implementation of it allows it to have teeth. So again, we have the regulations in place. Whether or not they have teeth is our government's fault.
And I'm saying that they should give it teeth.
Okay, so you don't need the government to approve software, which is the comment you said.
No,
you need the government to enforce the regulations, and you want the government to enforce them, not to hand it off to another party.
Right, but I also don't want it to be an issue of prosecuting people once the cat's out of the bag. If all of our consumer information is out and released, putting 5 people in jail doesn't fucking mean anything to me. What matters to me is making sure that it never happens again, and that a system of secure information retention exists that won't be violated in such a simply stupid way.
I think you're asking for too much there. That just won't happen. It won't
asking
happen.
for too much is a weak argument against something. No. Saying that something should happen, but it's just asking for a lot is a weak argument. I think you should absolutely ask for the most.
I should be able to walk down the street without worrying about getting mugged. I should be able to do that today.
When was the last time you thought you would get mugged?
I'm a different case, right?
I'm
cocky.
I called out your straw man. I called out your straw man. It's not going to work on me.
But there are people that don't, and that's the reality of it. Is
for the sake of argument, we'll call them women.
I can think. Huh? I never called you
for the sake of argument. No, for the sake of argument, we'll call it women who feel like they can't walk down the street safely.
Oh. Well, no, let's take me, for example. I can, right?
7'3".
I do. Not exactly even close to that, but then I can't, I can just as easily get mugged, right? And, whose fault is that? Yeah. Is that the government's fault? Because they had instilled in me the philosophy that I can walk down the street without getting mugged. Is it their fault that I get mugged?
Well, I'll answer this question, but I'll have to cut it from the podcast. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is the government's fault.
Oh, Thomas.
Right. Thomas. Like I said, I'm going to cut it from the podcast because I said another thing in the last podcast that I just cut out completely because I just didn't want to deal with it. But 100%, yeah, no, if you get mugged walking down the street with a gun, it's the government's fault. 100%. Because there are in Australia.
I don't know where the show's starting again.
In Australia, that simply doesn't happen. Because the government said, we're not putting up with it anymore. Give us all your fucking guns, you fucking morons. And everyone did, and now you can't get mugged with a gun in Australia. And every Australian thinks that's great.
Oh man, you're definitely cutting that out.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely cutting that out. But it's 100% my opinion. And I've had a problem for 2 years. I've had a problem for 2 years where my opinion is that the gun control situation in America is outlandishly ridiculous. The fact that you can't even discuss gun control because you're afraid someone will threaten to kill you is fucking ridiculous. And everyone who is for large-scale gun control in America knows that they can't say that they are because someone will threaten to kill them on the internet. That's pretty terrifying. Yeah,
Mhm.
I can't go on Facebook and say it, even though I know Facebook is my echo chamber. I'm not allowed to express the opinion that I think guns fucking kill people, and there's no reason in modern society for us to allow anyone to just have them.
Okay. Wow. Whoa, that's a super powerful statement. So you don't think citizens should have guns at all?
No, why should they? They're toys.
They're not toys,
They are toys.
and they're not toys. Why do you keep saying that?
Because everyone I know who has a gun says it's for home security or protection of property or hunting, but in reality, it is a toy. It is a thing that they go out and shoot bottles and cans with.
I completely disagree with that statement. If anybody who owns a gun views it as a toy, then they just shouldn't own a gun. But do you not?
They don't
Do
view
you
it as a
not?
toy. That's the difference.
So do you not agree though that, especially like you have somebody like Trump in office, the fact that we as citizens have a right to arm ourselves from our government?
We don't have
You
the
don't
right to arm
feel-
ourselves against the government.
We
David Koresh
do.
tried to. No, David Koresh tried to. They killed him for it. They killed him because he said, "I'm keeping guns because I'm afraid of the government," and so they killed him and 13 other people on accident.
I think you're making more out of that, and that's not why they went after him. But
No, it is.
I don't know. I didn't. So
Look at
so
the
you think we would
people
be a
who were.
safer? You think we'd be a safer nation? And this only surprises me because I know your
You
opinions
want
and
to do the sign
philosophy
off real quick?
against our government. I guess. Should we talk about something else so we can wind down better?
So
All right,
the new iPhone X, huh?
how about that?
removed the fingerprint
Okay,
scanner.
I don't even remember where we. You're gonna have to edit this. I don't know where we
I
were. But
I know. I knew I was derailing when I did.
yeah, let's pick up somewhere where we can wind down and
No,
hang
we
up
did.
here.
We did wind down. Okay, so I think the Equifax breach has presented a lot of problems that a lot of people in our industry knew were going to happen. We knew that this was going to occur, and we're sort of not surprised that it's happening. I'm sort of not surprised that the media isn't making a big deal out of it.
Well, the bigger thing is, personally, not only am I not surprised it happened, but this is not the worst of it. It's going to get worse. I promise you, it's going to get
Absolutely.
worse. People are literally going to see the money in their accounts disappear at some point, and there'll be some sort of uproar about it. A lot of these breaches we've seen have been with credit cards and uh, all these kind of virtual money scenarios. But nobody's, you don't see it that much with cold hard cash. We do have to struggle with identity theft, but there's an effort involved with that. I'm still banking on the day that banks have a serious breach that includes the draining of people's physical money, where
Yeah, absolutely.
people like me will have to fight their financial institutions to prove how much money should be in their account. Because if you think about it, all my worth is in these financial institutions. Now I break mine up between financial institutions. This is one of the reasons, because I'm anticipating the day where one of these institutions get hit, and all of a sudden I see no money in my account, and it's going to be catastrophic to myself and everybody else who's a part of that financial institution. And it's I harp back to Mr. Robot, where they had an episode of a lady trying to explain to the bank that I've closed my loans with you. I've paid off my loans. I want my money out. And them saying, we can't prove any of that. We're not giving you any money. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. No, it's my money. Give it to me.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. And people need to understand that. I'm not saying store money under your mattresses. That's not necessarily a great idea, but you need to be prepared for the day you wake up and your bank is on the news and they say, oh, yeah, if you bank with us, we're sorry. You can't make a withdrawal for another week or two until we figure all this out.
Well, and this has happened in other countries that America likes to think are not first world countries, but they absolutely are. There have been runs on banks in the last 10 years multiple times. So this doesn't apply to me, but so that our listeners who for some reason have lots of money know, FDIC coverage for a bank is up to $250,000 per account. So if you have more than $250,000 in cash, split it between banks. Make sure that the FDIC coverage, make sure your FDIC coverage is split up and that your insurance exists on all your accounts. Know that credit unions are not FDIC insured.
And the thing about it is FDIC insurance, I don't want to say it's a philosophy, but it's never been anything that's really been, it's never been anything that's been, exactly. It's never been put to the test. The federal government has never had to come back and say, okay, here's all this money back to this institution because we insured it. It just hasn't happened yet. So
yeah. And if you're renting your house, or if you have an upside down mortgage, you should probably know what squatters' rights are. You should probably know how long you're allowed to live in your home without paying, so that your family has a roof over their heads in case all of a sudden you have no money. Because we like to think of squatters as awful people or the bad end of the spectrum, but the day comes that everyone gets fucked. You might need to be a squatter so that you still have a roof.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you're on board with doom and gloom this week. I'm going to close it. I'm going to close it there. We've gone to a dark place.
Sounds good to me. You enjoy editing this one.
Oh, I'm sure I will. All right. I'm Tom Rideout.
I'm Eric Van Johnson. Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly.
Jesus Christ, man. This is why we have to have John on.
I'm trying to cut the show down to less than an hour. I really want the show to be 45, tight 45 minutes.
Oh, shit. I didn't even talk about, damn it. You got me. You went down doom and gloom. I didn't even talk about the fact that we recorded the second episode of PHP Architect. Oh, well.
You can throw it into the intro or the outro if you want to.
Yeah, that's fine. They haven't released it yet, so I'll do it next week. Oh, I should stop recording, yeah.
So, yes, you know my position about the government. But I am also anti-gun.